But at this point, I'd like to move on to the next session, which is, we've heard a little bit about from President DeGioia. Georgetown has had the Engelhard program for, I think he said, almost 20 years. And that's really been a program that has been on the forefront of trying to achieve the things that we are talking about, and that more and more institutions, higher education, different parts of higher education. At our table, we were talking about how we need to get a summit of different organizations together, not just people who are in the faculty, but people in student affairs and across different organizations together to have these kind of conversations, and we'll work on that. But right now, we'd like to give you the opportunity to hear about this program at Georgetown that was really at the forefront. So I'd like to introduce Jocelyn Schultz, Lewis, and Nestori Nagoli to come up and present on the program. Let me introduce them first. Jocelyn is the Director of Inclusive Pedagogy in the Center for New Designs in Learning and Scholarship at Georgetown. She is an educator, facilitator, and educational developer focused on inclusive and equity-focused teaching and learning. She works with faculty, graduate students, departments, and programs on inclusive pedagogies, pedagogical and curricular innovation, facilitating difficult discussions, and designing approaches to well-being and whole student learning. At CNDLS, she is the co-lead of the Engelhard Project for Connecting Life and Learning, an innovative Georgetown program for integrating student well-being issues into academic context. She earned her MA in Communication, Culture, and Technology from Georgetown, and also holds a BA in Religious Studies from Davidson. She is currently pursuing a master's degree in social work, clinical practice from Boston University School of Social Work. Nestori is a pre-medical student at Georgetown, majoring in biology of global health with a minor in science, technology, and international affairs. Following her first year at Georgetown, Nestori began to take a particular interest in mental health on college campuses across the nation and how the diversity of student backgrounds, particularly in the FGLI and international student populations, can yield different experiences for students as they transition to college. He is also interested in the increased focus that we have begun to put on mental health on our campuses, especially following the pandemic. He hopes to find ways to maintain this focus and amplify his peers' voices across the country as they work to resolve the challenges facing this generation of students. So I'd welcome the two of them to the stage to talk about the Engelhard program.
Hi all, thanks so much for the opportunity to join you and add in on the conversation that you're having today. Thanks for the kind introduction. I'm Jocelyn Schultz-Lewis, and as you heard, I serve as the Director of Inclusive Pedagogy at CANDLES. That's how we pronounce that acronym, CNDLS, the Center for New Designs in Learning and Scholarship, and it's the Center of Teaching and Learning at Georgetown.
And I'm Nestori. I am a sophomore undergrad student here at Georgetown, and I am a member of the Student Advisory Council for the Engelhard Project.
And it's our pleasure to share a bit about our work at Georgetown on this project with you today. I wanted to start with a little bit of what is Engelhard and some of our backstory. The Engelhard Project for Connecting Life and Learning comes out of CANDLES. And began almost 20 years ago, as you heard, in 2005, thanks to a grant from the Bringing Theory to Practice project, where we proposed exploring the relationship between student well-being and engaged learning. We hypothesized at that point that by integrating student well-being issues into their academic content and the course, we hope to have a positive impact on student learning as well as the culture of well-being at Georgetown. And how did we do that? Our standard course model for doing Engelhard came from work from a few faculty champions who were already doing this in their courses. We learned from them and developed our curriculum infusion model for doing Engelhard, and for almost 20 years, this has continued to be the foundation of our project. We start by inviting faculty to redesign a course by choosing a well-being topic, that they think connects well to the content of the course. And then with that topic in mind, we ask faculty to do 3 things. Assign a reading related to the topic, partner with a campus resource professional with an expertise connected to the chosen topic, and invite them in as a guest lecturer, discussant, co-facilitator for 1 day in the course, and include a written reflection assignment for students about the impact of bringing well-being topics into the learning and into the course. So with that model in mind, what do Engelhard courses look like? How does this model play out in the classroom? There are so many rich stories. We have examples of Engelhard courses in mathematics, psychology, theology, nursing, philosophy, business, government. I've chosen just 5 to highlight here for you with the course name, the respective discipline, and the Engelhard well-being topic that the faculty member chose to integrate into the course. I'm going to speak in just a little bit more detail about the first 2. I'm happy to answer questions about the other 3 here, and then we get to hear from the story about his experiences in 2 Engelhard courses as well. Professor Karen Storr teaches her 200+ Intro to Ethics course as an Engelhard course, and she focuses her Engelhard work on a part of the course on Immanuel Kant, and some of his writings on topics such as alcohol, the impact of substance abuse on friendship and community. Her Engelhard topic focuses on our responsibility to each other as a campus community. She partners with health educator Jen Schweer, our Director of Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Services here at Georgetown, to extend the conversation into issues of sexual assault, the role of bystander intervention, and the role of alcohol and substance abuse in relationship to being who we want to be for our friends, for ourselves, and our community. The second example, Intro to Math Modeling, Professor Jim Sandifer took us up on the invitation to redesign his non-majors math course into an Engelhard course by choosing data sets that connect to mental health and well-being topics for his problem sets. He partnered with our Director of Health Services, Carol Day, to integrate a conversation about what a balance of healthy eating and healthy exercise look like in numbers and in practice. I'm going to turn to Nestori.
Okay, so since my freshman year here at Georgetown, I've taken 2 Engelhard courses, and I was fortunate enough to take them both in my freshman year. As you can see on the display, the first class that I took that was an Engelhard course was Foundations of Biology 1. So that's a course that's taught to over 100 students, and generally because it's a biology course and it's an introduction level course, a lot of students who are on the pre-health coursework or intend to eventually apply to medical school or other medical professions find it necessary to take this course. It's a required course. And I'm sure, as a lot of you guys know, there's a general theme or trend or, I guess, idea around the pre-health community with it being very cutthroat, with it being very, just a generally toxic environment. And that's something that's known here at Georgetown with students as they come in, and that's something that's known with other students at other schools. But what I really liked about this course, and specifically with Professor Elmendorf and how she taught it, was that she aimed to kind of cut back on that idea. What she wanted to do was kind of generate a community within that class, as those are the students who you are likely going to be crossing the stage with in 4 years. Those are the students who are going to be in your classes for the next 4 years. When you have issues, those are the students who you might eventually turn to for help. And so one thing that she did to really bring the Engelhard mission of health and wellness to the classroom was she took one of the most dreaded things in the world, a research paper, and she turned it into an Engelhard kind of project. So what she wanted to focus on was mental health and the importance of its destigmatization. And what she encouraged all the students to do was to go and research the genetics behind mental health. It's a very new field, very interesting field for a lot of students in the class. But rather than just going up and assigning this to students, putting it in the syllabus, handing out a rubric for students to follow, she decided to present it to us by first talking about her struggles with mental health. And her vulnerability, being able to go up in front of that class of over 100 students who she had only known, some of us really, for just the past 2-3 weeks, it really opened the door for a lot of students to sit down with each other and have conversations, which is something that's generally not seen in a lot of other courses, specifically like STEM courses or large lectures. So she really opened the door for a lot of students, such as myself and others in the class, to just be able to talk with each other about what we feel vulnerable about, stuff that you generally wouldn't tell people who I guess aren't your family members, people who you haven't just like met 3 weeks ago. And so she encouraged students to do that, and in doing that, not only did she open the door for students to talk to each other, she opened the door for students to come and talk to her. Generally, people see classes as being a top-down sort of structure, where the professor speaks to you and you kind of listen, you write down. But in a way, she subverted that. She encouraged students to come and educate her about how they have experienced classes and how they have experienced mental health in this new college setting. Additionally, I took another class called Intro to Medical Anthropology, starting to see the trend here with the pre-health stuff, which is a class of roughly 30 students. And like I said, the word medical attracts a lot of students who are interested in pre-health coursework. And one thing that I also really liked about this class was how it expanded our knowledge of what it means to be healthy, what it means to be well. And I think that's something that Engelhard really works towards. Professor Sylvia Onder, who was the professor for this class, layered into this class in just about every lesson and every reading challenges to our general perception of what it means to be healthy and well. Generally, especially for students in this pre-health coursework, that means going to a doctor, talking to a psychiatrist. But what she showed us is that the hospital setting, the psychiatry setting, those aren't the only settings where you can talk about your health, where you can talk about being well. Rather, she showed us that even inside the classroom, you can achieve wellness, you can achieve health. She invited us to explore what it means in different cultures across the world, specifically in Turkey, which was her area of specialty, about what it means to be well and how that is not necessarily aligned with what we think about in our day-to-day. She showed us specifically that also wellness can be built in the classroom, not just through grades, but also through the knowledge that you're acquiring. In this class, she set up a more discussion-based style where she encouraged students to do readings and related those back to our daily lives. She encouraged students to bring up stuff that they had seen in their clinical experience. This being a class with a lot of students with interests in medicine. A lot of students have a lot of different clinical experiences, whether they're in the School of Nursing, whether they're an EMT on campus, or if they're just doing something with hospital research or shadowing in the hospital. So a lot of students had clinical experience, and she allowed them to relate this to their experiences in their day-to-day lives and extracurricular activities. She also created this concept of care houses, in which she grouped students 4 or 5 together in one group, with the goal of mixing students who had virtually nothing in common. I know in my group, I was a freshman when I took this class. There was nobody from my graduating class who was in that group. I was paired with sophomores, juniors, and seniors. While this might seem scary for a lot of students, I liked this because it gave us a way in which we could learn from each other in ways that we normally wouldn't. Normally, you'd be encouraged to go and hang out with the friends that you know in that class. You'd be encouraged to only talk to the students who are kind of in your major. The concept of the care house was to get you to learn more about your peers, and it kind of broke down that barrier of individuality that's generally held in a lot of classes. And rather than you checking in for attendance, say, as an individual, you would check in as a care house. Together as a group, you would report that everyone is here and everyone is well, which is a lot different from what you see in a lot of other classes. You would work together on homework together. You'd work on exams, in-class exams that were group exams together with this care house. So there was a large system of sort of interconnectedness and dependency on one another that she developed in this class, on top of it being discussion-based, which just made the class a lot easier for students to kind of communicate with the professor as well as with each other. that built a sense of wellness and also redefined what we pictured as wellness. And so that's why I felt like Intro to Medical Anthropology is a great example of the Engelhard mission.
Yeah. I love the attendance approach that Professor Ondor integrated. She's talked about it over time. The care houses had to choose names, and so she would call out the names and they would report attendance. And then the follow-up was, if anyone was missing, the group was responsible for checking in with the person, making sure they had notes for the class that they missed and finding out if they needed anything else, and then bringing that back to the faculty member if there's anything else that the missing student might need. So really integrated throughout. I wanted to share some example well-being topics to give you a sense of the range that we see in Engelhard courses these days. One of the things that I think that we didn't necessarily do on purpose, but that we realized was beneficial over time, was a real openness to what faculty wanted to include when we said, think about well-being topics that connect with your course. And the impact with having that open and expansive concept and definition has meant that I think you can imagine in 2005, when you say student well-being, there were a set of topics that came up. Some of them are right in the mix still. Depression and anxiety was there from the beginning. We did a lot more around alcohol than we do right now, substance abuse. Those are still there too, but they were a larger area of interest. And the expansiveness, I think, has really been driven by an ability to be responsive to student need, connect to faculty interests and their developing courses, and then just in sort of the sense in society of how we are using well-being and its ability, I think much more today than in 2005, to also include issues that we think about when we talk about equity-centered work and access and a wider range of topics and issues. So a little bit more on from the project's perspective of how we do this work. We started small, and that also, in hindsight, feels really important to how we grew. We wanted this to be ground up. We reached out to faculty, and we began with 5 courses in the first semester of fall 2005. 2 or 3 years in, we grew to sort of a steady state in the kind of 17 to 25 range. And then in 2017, we were able to expand again and grew to an average of closer to 45 courses. And then, in fact, at this point, the last 5 semesters have kind of put this through the roof. We're over 50 every semester, and this past fall was a new course record at 59. Oh, sorry, that's wrong. We hit 69 last fall. We'll see if that continues this fall, but we keep growing. Another point of Project Reach is the community that we've grown around this work. Over almost 20 years, we've worked with 215 unique faculty members, 95 campus partners, reaching over 650 courses, and then you can see here about 2,000 students have been enrolled in these 650 some courses over the life of the project. And I just wanted to call out a few more on the lessons learned front of things that we think have mattered for how we did this and its ability to be sustained over the life of the project so far. So you heard in my intro that I work in the Center for Teaching and Learning. We think that this matters. We're not in one department, one school, and we are also in the academic side of the house. So we've been able to emphasize that this project is about good pedagogy. It's about student learning, in addition to being about a number of other things too. The model that I shared at the outset, pick a well-being topic, do these 3 things, has been a low enough threshold of entry that I think we've been able to find our way into a lot of places on campus. And then stay flexible and adaptable in the ways that faculty find what fits for them with a given course or with their pedagogical approaches. And that has been a big bonus over time. Connecting to the campus safety net. So from the beginning, it felt really important for us in Candles in order to connect with faculty and in doing the work of the project to be able to say, you aren't doing this alone. If you're going to bring these topics into your courses, there are these amazing people on campus whose job it is and whose function is to support the well-being of students. And so almost every semester we offer a safety net training workshop, where for about a third of the workshop, we're looking at student data as self-reported through our own institutional survey work. We're talking about the processes, mechanisms, the care providers, and the connection opportunities that students have and that faculty can help connect students to. And then about a third of the workshop, we're talking through scenarios. What about this, when this happens? Who might you talk to? The big message that we try to extend in the workshop is that there's really no wrong place to go when it comes to the Georgetown safety net. Here are these terrific people, and your entry point can be any one of those, and you as a faculty member also can reach out and say, I got this paper and I'm concerned. Could I share it with you? And that we have an amazing network of folks who can help with those next steps. The pedagogical partnership is what we call that faculty and campus resource professional work, the collaboration around the Engelhard courses. And I think from the beginning, we thought that the intervention and the main driver of change would be the integration of this well-being topic into the course. And that certainly matters. But what we've seen that also matters over the life of the project is that two educators collaborating together in relationship, showing their connection, showing their shared vulnerability as part of an academic, what's labeled as an academic conversation, does something. That in and of itself, it almost doesn't matter what they're talking about. That does something, creates a kind of a break or a reframe in the relationships in the classroom. And many of our faculty talk about how from that moment on, forevermore, they're human to their students in a way that they weren't quite human before that moment. It does a little bit more work on that front. And you can hear from the language that, and the stories Nestori was talking about with his courses and the language I'm using, that from the project side, we've also really learned that we have to walk our own talk here. That we say, well, we're hoping you can help students show up as whole people. Faculty need to do that too, and then so do we in the project space. So early on, we were drawing faculty together at the end of the semester in reflection sessions to find out how things were going. And then in the third or fourth semester, they started saying to us, oh my gosh, it's so great to hear these ideas. I wish I'd talked to this person earlier in the semester. Can you get us together more often? And so that's turned into what we call community of practice gatherings, and it's a whole nother element of the project in and of itself. 2 or 3 times a semester over breakfast or lunch often, we invite anyone who's ever been involved in the project, faculty, campus resource professionals, to join us for a conversation. Sometimes we provide the topic because we want to talk to them about something that we read about or that we're hearing about. Sometimes they bring the conversation to us. But those gatherings as a place of continuing the work has been a huge bonus and support of the project as a whole. And then I think another amazing addition, just in the last 2 years, that we should have done earlier, is the Student Advisory Council. So, Cantu.
Yeah, so the Student Advisory Council, it really meets the mission that Engelhard is trying to put forth, which is promoting health and wellness in the classroom. And of course, if we're going to have faculty's views being contributed to the idea of the Engelhard project, you also have to include the other half of the classroom, which is the students who are going to be taking these courses. And so what the Student Advisory Council aims to do is to get that student voice into the discussion It's to allow students to contribute in a way that they feel like would promote their health and their wellness in the classroom, and essentially allows them to just get their opinions out there. You can get a very different perspective from a student communicating something to a teacher versus when the student is directly communicating something to the actual body, which is making the changes. And so that's exactly what the Student Advisory Council aims to do. It's just making sure that student voices are heard and that they can contribute to their own learning, which is something that all students definitely want to do. They want to make their own changes. They want to create a world in which they feel like they are supported and they are valued.
We wanted to share a little bit about what we think is happening because of this work.
Right, so there's a quote on the board right there, and I just want to hone in a very key part that I felt like about this quote, which was the very kind of last sentence where the student highlights, this is a student from an Engelhard course, highlights the importance of well-being being promoted in the class rather than churning out good grades. And I find that that often seems to be seen as something that they can't coexist, that you can't have well-being and you can't also value good grades and academic success in a classroom. And I feel like this student and me share the same view where that is just simply not true. When I find that when students care more about their classes, when they find themselves in an environment that seems to care more about them, they feel more in tune with what they're learning. They're more inclined to want to learn about it. They're more inclined to show up to class. They're more inclined to participate when they're in that class. And all of that contributes to them actually learning and retaining the material that's taught in there. I can tell you for certain that from my Engelhard classes, I believe that I've retained much more information in those classes than I have in many of my other classes that I've taken here at Georgetown. So the fact that well-being and good grades are compatible, they are two things that can coexist, and that honestly students want them to coexist. And so what the students really honing at here is that the Engelhard mission is successful in the classroom. When students are able to have those conversations with a professor that they normally wouldn't have, when they're able to participate in a discussion rather than a lecture, that is what is key in learning. And that is honestly, in a sense, more important than good grades, and I believe that there's a lot of students that agree with that mission. And then in the second quote here, one of my colleagues on the Student Advisory Council, Billy, highlights the importance of college as a place of figuring out who you are. When students walk into the classroom every day, they are there to learn, but not just what's being taught, but to also learn more about who they are and what they can become. And so figuring out where your strengths and weaknesses are what I see as a very key component of what college stands for as a whole. It's about educating young adults for how they're going to act in the future, how they're going to be in the future, where they find themselves, and where they might find that they need help. And that's okay to need help. And I think that's something that a lot of Engelhard courses highlight as being okay. There is no perfect person. Never has been, there never will be. But we can all keep striving to figure out who we are and how we can be the best person that we can be. And I find that to be something that is very important for the learning environment. When students recognize that they might not always get that perfect A+, that they might fall sometimes. But it's important to realize that there might be other areas that you are strong in and that you can continue to work and continue to be better as a person and work on your health and wellness in order to achieve just that safer, more inclusive learning environment that all students are striving for. And so that's something that Engelhard Project brings to the table for a lot of students. That's something that we as an Engelhard Student Advisory Council strive to create for our peers. And I think that that position for me and for my colleague Billy, we find that to be very rewarding, as we feel like we've been on sort of the winning side of things, where we've been able to benefit from being able to take Engelhard courses and being able to experience what it's like to be in that environment and compare it and contrast it with other classes that maybe aren't Engelhard. And so finding out what our strengths and weaknesses are through these classes and feeling what it's like to learn in an environment that curates wellness and health is something that we feel is very important and something that we are very proud of and thankful to be a part of.
We also have another representative, Izzy, from the Engelhard Student Advisory Council, who weighed in on what she's thinking that happens with faculty. So we wanted to share her words with you all today too. In general, from faculty, things that we hear are that Engelhard gives me permission and the network to teach how I want to teach. I can open up issues, let my students know that I see them as whole people, and know that I'm not taking all of that on myself. A quote from a faculty member that we've worked with. We also hear from faculty, it's helped my students take a step back and break us out of our transactional relationship. They're learning so much better and more effectively because we're in relationship with each other. And I have said, I see you. They're finding something in the material that relates back to them. Biology is about them, so they're better biologists. Psychology is about them, so they're better psychologists. Philosophy is about them, so they're better philosophers. From our network of campus resource partners, we hear, you're driving more business to our door, and that's what we want. It's also tough to manage, but also we know we're doing this as part of a larger, more connected team where this is valued at an institutional level. There are conversations that we can have in a classroom that we can't have in my clinic setting that are fundamental to supporting our students' well-being and being their best selves. And at an institutional level, thank you, President DeGioia, for the quote. And also, the other big takeaway for us as a project is that we didn't just create a student well-being and engaged learning project. We've found out over the years that we think we created a faculty and staff well-being project too. Our campus resource professionals have noted that it's good for them and almost functions like an anti-burnout intervention, and we can use Corey Keyes' language, anti-demoralizing intervention, that they feel seen as educators, that it gets them out of their clinical settings and helps them have a sense of what well looks like beyond the students in crisis in front of them every day. And they feel valued by faculty and administration in ways that they didn't before. And our faculty are also saying this work has changed them and how they approach their professional identity. It's the community, the conversations, space to talk deeply about teaching and learning, the camaraderie with other faculty and staff that does, and what that does for their relationships with the community and with their work, with their students, that has been transformative. That's been the capacity growing space on the project that I think has led us to 20 years and counting. So, thank you very much.
And we have time for some questions. Ed.
Thanks. I apologize if I missed it, but of the faculty, number of faculty you've engaged over the years, what percentage have been from the McDonough School of Business or the School of Foreign Service as opposed to Arts and Sciences?
Yeah, great question. So we have been more focused in the College of Arts and Sciences. Our faculty lead champions at the beginning of the project were from the School of Nursing and Health Studies and from the college. And so we really grew out of those spaces from the beginning. We have courses in the McDonough School of Business and in SFS, in the School of Foreign Service, but those numbers are significantly smaller. Another thing that I didn't mention is we started with undergrad generally. We became much more focused on even lower division undergrad after a few years of feedback from faculty. We now pilot graduate courses with Engelhard courses too, but those are small in numbers at this point as well.
Hi, I have a question for Nusori. Your care houses are very interesting right now for the Quest program and how we expand and move into the future. When you were in your care house with your 5 or 6 other students, and one of them was slacking. Were you guys actually intervening in the classroom, or were you intervening outside of the classroom saying, hey buddy, like sending them a text? Were you like, why are you slacking?
Yeah, I found that one of the nicest part about the care houses was that we didn't have to do that stuff in the classroom. It kind of connected us, allowed us to reach out to each other outside of the classroom. So stuff like that, it could happen at basically any point throughout the day, where you essentially really just send a text, send a message. Sometimes students wouldn't be like in class. I know I had a student athlete in in my care house. And so like, of course, you have games that might be away games, so they won't be able to be present when we're meeting. So that's obviously something that we as students had to work around. But one thing that I did find is that because of the interconnectedness and the way that we all found ourselves depending on each other, it was very difficult for students to consistently be in that position where they were quote unquote slacking off or weren't like doing their work. Because it's another thing to know like when you're submitting it to like a teacher and you're like, hey, I'm just going to be late with this assignment. But it's another thing to know when you're working in tandem with your classmate, with your peers. I don't want to say that like put like peer pressure or something on students who were in that position, but it kind of motivates you because you know that it's almost like, I guess the goal from Sylvia Onder, the professor, was to create somewhat of a family. And like you want all parts of that family to be working well and kind of in tune with one another. So with regards to like collaboration and stuff like that, students found it just like, it would be okay when students did have to take a step back because it's understandable everybody has parts of their lives that like get more difficult from time to time throughout the year. But everybody seemed to step right back up and right back into it right after, just because of the structure of the care house and the way that the class was structured.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to Jocelyn for leading the initiative, but I also want to say to Nestori, I think you're a Jack DeGoya in the making. You're just so wonderfully engaging, insightful, easy with your presentation. And I was laughing with some of my table mates here about the earlier comment from the Aspen Institute gentleman that at 24, Jack was already, giving him sage advice. And I think at your young age of 20 or 19, the same can be true of you. So thank you very much. I think you were awesome. I also just wanted to say this is the first time I think we've heard today about partnerships between the academic side of the house and the student affairs side of the house. We've been talking a lot about building relationships with students, and I think this is a great example of how we can break down the silos between those two divisions and begin to have a much richer experience, both for the staff and the faculty, and certainly for the students. So I appreciate that you highlighted that as another successful impact of the program.
Thank you.
I wonder if you could, first of all, I really love this program because if there is one common denominator for our diverse student populations, it's that they're going to sit in a classroom, right? So you're not really starting with asking students to attend another well-being program that they think they may or may not need, but this is where they are, where they're collecting their credits, where they're studying to be. Maybe something different than a university president. Sounds like you want to be a doctor. So maybe that's good too. So I just wonder how you imagine growing this. I mean, you had started with your champions, it caught a little bit of fire, and now you're here. And I just wonder, what's sort of the next stage and sort of keeping the momentum and continuing to get faculty to sign on board. And if you could also mention, when you talk about infusing well-being, is it in every session there's the expectation that there's a discussion? Or is it, one reading, one campus professional, and one assignment? Is it sort of beyond that? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, great question. So the model asks for one class. And what we have learned, and I think you heard me talking about, is especially depending on that timing, it does a thing. And so we're hopeful often in those courses that one class session really changes sort of the dynamics in the room and also opens up a different kind of conversation in the space. There are faculty who come to us and say, okay, I've got 5 ideas. Can you help me with a few more partners? So we have faculty who are doing this many times. And then I wish I could have another 8 of them up here with us to tell their stories, but there are plenty of folks who talk to us about, oh, well, it's Engelhard infused, like everything I do now. I'm talking, there's a philosophy faculty who comes to mind, and she has thought about ways that at the beginning of changes in units, they have a conversation about the topic and its connection to well-being, and that's not connected to a campus resource professional coming in. She's just doing this all the time at different points in the semester. And then there's a campus resource professional who also comes in and opens up another conversation there. So they're very varied ways that this is happening, which is exciting and so fun for us to watch and be part of. In terms of scaling, you saw the numbers. We are excited about those, and they have us stretched. And so we're in conversations about the next stages of the work. We have amazing support from leadership and on down. And I think your question, there are places where we really would like to be more present. So those tend to be our goals. We usually, at the beginning of every semester, as we're getting going, we'll identify, say, 4, 6, 8 faculty, new folks that we're going to try to have a conversation with. And sometimes we get someone who takes us up on it the first time we propose it to them. And other times, there's someone who's on the list several semesters before we have like a breakthrough or aha, yeah, okay, got it. I talked to so-and-so in my department, they're doing it, now I get it. I'm gonna try it here. So it's, yeah, very relational in that sense too, in the scaling and growth space. I mean, I would love to talk about NYU and
Hello, my name is Damon Moon from San Jose State University. I really love all of the work that you just shared today, and I'm really inspired by the work over almost a 2 decade. So congratulations on that. My question is, how can we scale that? So how can we have more Engelhard like courses and have not 6,000, but all 20,000 students at Georgetown, and maybe even 20 million students all across the US have that type of experience, and I think that would create an impact. What are some ways to do that? And maybe another slightly different question is, how can we motivate or encourage other faculty members to do the same thing in our own campuses?
I mean, you know your campuses, and we invite and welcome conversations if you'd like to brainstorm together about specific approaches and ways. I think the scale question, as you know, we were just talking, is a really challenging and crucial one. The project team is, there's about 4 of us, and I think as one of my colleagues said at one point, she said, "This is very manual." It took me a little bit to like, oh yeah, you mean like there isn't the flip the switch and all the things happen, and no, it's, and I think very relational, but there's also then the potential for that zip up, right? The community is much bigger than we were even 5 years ago. The campus resource professionals are just such a connected, integrated group. They keep coming forward and saying, I have an idea. Do you have any faculty members who would want me for this? Right? So just kind of listening to people and continuing to connect and use that network has been our go-to on the scaling.
All right, let's thank Jocelyn and Ms. Story. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.